The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love and compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
It's time for Health Futures with Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Welcome to the Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and I couldn't think of a more appropriate way to start our show here on Friday, September 11th. I still get chills. I get chills. That is the bullhorn speech from the wreckage at 9/11 Ground Zero when George W. Bush visited. And what a moment it was for our country, and we can never forget. Over 3,000 lives were lost, and we are forever changed as a result. So I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that this is a day that will live in infamy and a day that we will always remember. So I want to get on with our show, but I wanted to recognize those lives that were lost and the importance of this day in American history. So if you are tuning in to Health Futures for the very, very first time, our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. And how do we do this? We do this by bringing extraordinary guests to the show, and today is no different. I have an extraordinary guest who has not been on the show for about 4 years now, and that's all on me. But I would like to welcome to our listeners Karen Barno. She is the CEO and president of Arizona Alpha, which is the Assisted Living Federation of America. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for inviting me. I look forward to my 4-year visits.
Well, it was in 2014 was your first visit, and then you came back in 2016, and it's good to have you here in 2020. And, you know, we kicked off the show by commemorating this momentous day for not really good reasons. You know, it's one of the ugliest chapters of our country's history. Do you remember what you were doing 19 years ago on 9/11?
You know, I do. In fact, I was reflecting this morning, and I always tear up about it. I was in Chicago at a conference, sitting with my 2 dear friends from New York when it happened, and just watching everybody's reaction when it was taking place and the unknowing of what's taking place. And, you know, they were supposed to be heading to Chicago. I learned so much about human nature and leadership. just watching who really stood up at this large conference. I mean, we were all stranded for at least a week before we could catch a plane out.
Right.
And just watching, my friends from New York finally found a train, the last train out of town, to get back to New York. It took them 16 hours to get back there, but that's how important it was. I had friends take a limo to Kentucky, but when you're in Arizona, you don't have that luxury.
Right.
You're stuck.
Right, you are. But it's so amazing. I remember I got a call from my dad, and he said, "You watching TV?" I said, "No." And he says, "You better turn it on." And I turned it on, and one of the planes had already hit one of the buildings. And as soon as I turned it on, I watched the second building get hit. And then, I think all of us have these chills watching the towers just come down. It's an image that's emblazed in my mind, and I'll never, ever forget it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will. I think everybody could tell you exactly where they were. Because it was the same thing, because they're in Chicago. Arizona was behind us. So I called my husband and woke him up and said, "Do not let our daughter watch TV." And he's like, "Why?" I said, I can't even tell you. I can barely tell you what happened. So yeah, I still tear up.
I do too. It's a sad member. I did go to the memorial. I don't know if you have.
I have not been there yet.
But, when we get back to normal, and hopefully that's sometime soon when we get beyond COVID. But when we get back to normal, I certainly, encourage everyone to go visit that memorial. And, I watched a little bit of TV, and it's they're making the most of it. Families for 19 years or 18 years have been going to the site, and they, have had a big, gathering and remembrance, and they're not really able to do it. They're trying to do it virtually, like we all are.
But at least they didn't cancel it, because I know they wanted to cancel it, and New York said no. So at least they did it virtually.
Right. At least they did. Well, Karen, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you. We haven't golfed in a while.
We haven't golfed in a while. We haven't talked in a while. And when I had you on in 2016, you weren't doing all the stuff that you're doing now. No. I mean, it is incredible. You have this podcast, and you are this shadow healer, business builder. I've been listening to your podcast. It's chicken soup for the soul. It really
thank
is.
You.
I mean,
now you're gonna make me cry again. I'm gonna be a big crybaby.
No, but it really is. It's very thoughtful, and you it's inspirational. And I even learned a little bit about you. I didn't realize that you saw a speech therapist for all these years. I have a daughter that's a speech therapist.
Well, I could go see her, because I still don't say my R's and my S's well. I just, speech therapy back then was just sitting seriously in a room with the teacher by myself saying Silly Sally and Rudy Rooster over and over for a half hour. That was speech therapy. So.
Wow. Well, you know what? You speak really well, and
thank
you're not afraid of the mic, and you're doing a great job with what you're doing. So, before we jump into Alpha, I'd love to know, how did you take this twist, to this turn, and maybe it was something that was a fire that was burning inside of you that just all of a sudden emanated. But I mean, it's a transformation from what I really thought of you and knew of you, because I look at you as one of my colleagues in the older adult world, and there's this inspirational side of you.
Yeah, I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. I think a lot of people thought I would stay on the assisted living path, and I love senior housing and I love assisted living. But from where I sit, I see a lot of women in assisted living. I don't see a lot of women that look like me in management, in CEOs. I mean, there are some. I mean, Belmont has an owner CEO.
Right.
Avante, there are some, but not a lot. And as I talk to women, I just find that women have a tendency to undersell who they are and not have the confidence of who they could be. And I thought, I have got to teach and help women stand up and say, you have a strong voice. Let your voice out.
Being a father of daughters,
you have very strong women.
I do, and it starts at home. They've got a great mother and a great mentor, and many of our listeners have heard Susie here on the show. But I love what you do, and we need more of that. We need more people inspiring women. Mm-hmm. I will share this with you because they all are in the business world, but my oldest, it's been really challenging sometimes for her when she's had a woman supervisor. Mm-hmm. And we can get into that, but I mean, it's almost like they eat their young. I mean, and that's wrong. They should be helping them and promoting them and encouraging them and coaching them.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, we can talk a little bit more about that, but we got a little Marshall Tucker band taking us
and
out.
I love the song.
I do
so.
too. I got a great engineer here in James. James, you hit it out of the park as always. You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and I've got Karen Barno in the studio. It's been 4 years too long. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We're in our second segment. If you're just tuning in, the first segment, we gave a nice little tribute to the fallen lives that happened as a result of 9/11. And I still tear up, Karen, when I hear George W. Bush and with the bullhorn from the wreckage. And also, how can we forget 9/11 was when, or should I say 2001, was when the Diamondbacks won the World Series and we beat the New York Yankees.
I know. When you look at how everything lined up, it's just the universe.
But how about our president going out to the mound, and you see presidents go up and try to throw that ball, that first pitch, and he threw a strike.
I know, he nailed it. Without a bulletproof jacket on. He said he wouldn't wear one.
Right.
Which was impressive because I would have worn one.
Yeah, so I mean, you talk, a lot of people, talk smack about our president. I will tell you, he's good in my book, especially with the way he rose to the occasion.
Yep.
Really did. Leadership, and we need more of that. For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So a lot happened in the 4 years, and you got this podcast, and it's called Possibilities Cafe, and I talked about you being this, shadow healer, and I was listening to one of your podcasts. It was the first one talking about shadows. I'd love for you to share with us the essence of what the messaging is that you're putting out there, and you did mention in the first segment you want to inspire women to really take leadership roles and really take control of their lives. So please, platform is yours. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about it. I know you weren't ready to talk about this.
I wasn't. I was ready for senior housing. I had that down.
We're gonna talk about that in a second.
I know. I just find my target audience, I guess, not a good word, but is women that are 50 and older, because at our age group, we took whatever job we could get, and we're grateful coming out of college that we got the jobs, and we, kept taking the jobs we had. And some of us, I was blessed. I found a great job that fit my personality, but a lot of women don't. And they hit 50, 55, and they look around and say, wait a second, this isn't what I want to do. But then they have to figure out who they are and what do they really want to do. And they've buried it so deep, they don't know. And I call it that what next moment, when you're sitting there one day and you look up and you think, what's next in my life? Because, when you retire at 60, 65, you've still got 30, 40, 50 years to go.
God willing, yeah, absolutely.
And I have so many of my girlfriends that have retired and called me 6 months later and said, you can only golf so much.
Right.
Who knew? But I guess you can only golf so much. And they didn't know what to do with themselves. So I really started sitting down with them and coaching them, working through some of their blocks, their shadow blocks, and just kind of helping them find their way through. And it just was my passion.
Well, it's amazing, just the progress. We just commemorated the fact that it's been 100 years, I think it is, since women have been able to vote, which is incredible. I can't imagine a country where women can't vote, but that exists even to this day outside of the United States. But at the same time, I had an opportunity, not once but twice, to be a pageant judge. And I was a pageant judge for the Miss Senior Arizona.
Oh, that must have been fun.
You know what? It was so much fun and so inspiring to see these women. And, when we interviewed them, and we got their profile, there was one thing that was common. And the common was their professions. And their professions were secretaries. Their profession was school teacher. It was, and when you talked to them, they were like, this was the only jobs we could get. And, we're talking about people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and how far we've come, but yet how far we still need to go.
Exactly. And if you want to learn what regret is, go into a senior housing community and find a woman who's 90, 95. And that'll be one of the first things that she says is, I wish I would have taken that trip. I wish I would have gone to school. I wish I would have taken that job. It's regret. So why have regret?
Right.
We're at a different age and a different time. So go do what you really want to do. And the universe will line up to help you. You've just got to have the courage and, as we said offline, and the confidence to do it.
So if somebody wants to hear your podcast, how do they get that?
I'm on iTunes and Spotify, and it's Possibilities Cafe. And I named it Possibilities Cafe because everything in this world is possible. You just have to believe how great you are. And I mean, when you look at it, the stars don't fall from the sky. The sun shows up. How does that happen?
Right.
I mean, I sit sometimes and reflect on how all this happens. How do we communicate and hear one another? You have greatness within yourself. It's up to you, though, to let it out. So you're not 95, or by the time we get up there, 110 in a nursing home or assisted living saying, wow, why didn't I do this?
Right. No doubt. Well, thank you. Thank you for inspiring so many. And you're inspiring to me. I mean, I'm going to listen to the rest of the podcast. I believe you've been podcasting for a little bit over a year now.
For a little bit over a year. The next episode that'll drop today, because as I said, I had dog versus laptop, dog one, is on resilience.
Oh, great topic.
What makes people resilient and others not resilient?
And?
I don't know. I don't know. That's what I have so many questions.
Well, we don't have enough time to answer them here today, but I do want to start talking to you about senior housing, and that's the world that you have been in, and you've been in that for some time now. Mm-hmm. Like when you were out in Chicago, you were probably there for a senior housing conference.
Correct.
Yeah.
Arizona Alpha formed in 1997, and that was when assisted living formed in Arizona. In fact, we were the founders of assisted living. So, and I've just been here the whole way through, kind of shepherding it through all the changes.
And wow, how much has changed in
a
that
lot,
time?
A lot.
I mean, seriously, we're looking at, what, 23 years?
Mm-hmm. And we're going to see massive change coming out of COVID.
Yeah, and COVID has hit everybody,
mm-hmm.
especially in the senior care business, hard. And I know there's not been any exception to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, you and I had a chance to talk earlier this week, and I think a lot of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, people were looking at assisted living as more of the social solution. Mm-hmm. And there really, truly wasn't that medical component. And, I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on that. And what do you see as possibly changing? Because the whole world is changing, and senior care and senior housing is going to change as a result of that.
Yeah, when assisted living first started, at least in Arizona was a leader and had aging in place from the very beginning in assisted living. But across the state, across the country, a lot still aren't able to do a lot in assisted living, not a lot of hands-on, but most have turned more to providing medical care. But we spent so long screaming, we're the social model, and the difference between us and nursing homes, we're the social model, we're, the apartment model. Now when, COVID hits, we're sitting on an island screaming, wait a second, we're the medical model too. We need PPE. We need, money flowing towards us. So it just really kind of made us flip the script. And I think coming out of this, I don't see federal regulations yet. Not that I don't see it in 5-10 years, but I think the state's going to start looking at things differently. If this happened again, how does assisted living get included? Because we're regulated by the state, not the feds.
Right.
So, a lot of families would call us up and say, well, CMS says we can do this. And, that's great, but we don't follow CMS. We follow DHS. So a lot of confusion.
Oh, definitely a lot of confusion. And I mean, a lot of confusion for me as well. I mean, and certainly, one of the things that is a byproduct of this, it certainly showed the chinks in the armor, and showed how vulnerable not only assisted living is, but skilled nursing is, and everybody as a whole is, especially if you're aging. I mean, still to this day, 65% in Maricopa County, the deaths have happened in long-term care facilities. And that's tragic. And we need to do a better job of protecting one of our most vulnerable populations. You talk to a lot of the experts out there. They're saying that this pandemic may not be the last of our lifetime. We may be seeing more of these. So, if anything, this will give us a learning curve and get us ready for the next one that could possibly be down the road. God forbid, but if it were, we could be ready.
Yeah, and that's true. But it's also interesting to watch other businesses, like, HomeCare. The home cares that positioned themselves well ahead of time are still doing well. The home cares, the hospices, the home health that did not position themselves well are really suffering because they couldn't get into assisted living. I mean, we shut our doors tight.
Right.
So it's been interesting to watch that as well.
No, and it's been interesting just to see it all play out. And I believe you were part of the task force.
I was.
And I think you guys are still going, right?
We took a couple weeks break while everybody prepared for it, while the senior housing industry got ready for it. And we meet again next Tuesday, I believe, on the 15th, to talk about how it's gone so far. Well,
I will say this. I think it's amazing that this came together. And I know one of my previous guests, multiple guests here, as she's been on our show multiple times, is Dana Kennedy. I know she was a big factor in creating this. I mean, she couldn't even get the governor's attention until all of this happened. And now she's able to pull this task force together. And there has been progress made.
There has been. She may be small, but she's mighty.
She is. And
she's just she's just that type of person. You want to listen to her.
And we also have one of our legislative people. Is it Senator Langdon or Representative Langdon? I can't remember, but she's got a seat at the table too. Representative Langdon. Well, it's halftime here. Got a little Paul McCartney taking us out. Stick around. You listen to Health Futures. Karen Barno's in the studio. We'll be right back.
Being in control of your money provides freedom. Learn how to make it, spend it, and invest it.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I've got Karen Barno in the studio. She is the President and CEO of the Assisted Living Federation of America, otherwise known as Arizona Alpha. And she is also this podcaster, Possibilities Cafe, shadow builder.
Shadow healer. Business builder. To help women. I mean, so many women want to start their own business and they don't know how.
Right.
And online now, this is the time. If you're not online now, get online. Start your business now online.
Exactly. And listen, I've learned from the kids, anything that you want to learn, if you don't know, just YouTube. Yeah. You'll find something there that can help teach you, especially like whenever we're assembling things. We're frequent customers of our Amazon Prime, and some of the things that we've ordered, need some assembly.
Yeah.
Just go to YouTube. Somebody will demonstrate on how to do it. It's much easier than reading directions, right?
Yeah, for sure. But I do have to do a shameless plug. I do have a YouTube channel too, Karen Barno.
Oh, there you go.
And I only have like 80 subscribers, and I can't change the name until I get to 100. So, hey, a shameless shout out.
There you go. Go to Karen Barno YouTube and subscribe so we can get her over 100. Well, I want to talk about the work that you're doing at Alpha. And, you've talked about being at this since 1997 and really seeing a lot of change. And one of the things that we know is that our demographics here in Arizona are probably about 10 years ahead of any other state that's out there. I mean, we know by 2030 we're going to have more people 65 and older than we are going to have 18 and younger. You've seen a lot happen, and certainly the stuff that has happened in 2020 is incredible. None of us could have ever foreseen this. But I'd love for you to share, one, what you guys do. I mean, you have a bunch of members, and you represent them in many different ways and facets. Certainly legislatively you do, and you even shared with me you help procure PPE too.
Yeah,
so
my side hustle now.
Yeah. So I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit about Alpha and what you guys are doing.
if it's assisted living, we try to be involved in all of it. I mean, our tagline is the voice of assisted living. So, I mean, we do legislation. We're involved with that. We also work closely with Department of Health Services. We work closely with our members, especially over COVID, because there's been a lot of unknown, a lot of gray in a world that's typically, healthcare is typically a black and white world. But it's been very gray, so I've helped our members manage that and kind of be the in-between, sometimes between families and residents, Department of Health Services and the provider, whatever we can do to make our communities work easier and have a better flow. And, you know, when all this PPE started, assisted living we didn't have a lot of PPE. It's not what we do.
Right.
So we had to get PPE, and as everybody else, it was flowing to them, the hospitals and the nursing homes, we couldn't get anything. So I finally had to find a connection that could help get us legitimate PPE. You know, so we're able to source that now too.
PPE being personal protection equipment, and what'd you do? You find a guy that knew a guy?
I found a guy who actually had spent his mission in China and stayed there for about 10 years.
Wow.
He's in assisted living himself. He's an owner in Tucson. So he already had the connections, and his building was flush with it. And I had caught wind, so I called to say, hey, can you loan some out? And he's like, I can do better than that. I can get you some. So I just sent the word out to all of our members, you know, to work through him. Obviously, I'm not a middlewoman here. I stay out of it.
Sure.
But he gets it in. He understands how the China market works and how shipping works. It's very different over there. China is not as we perceive it to be as far as how the power bases work there. So it's been quite a learning experience as well.
And I think all of us, because in-home care is the same as you guys. I mean, you know, we follow OSHA guidelines, and we certainly know a little bit about infectious control, but we've never really had to do what we're doing today. And we found ourselves as agency owners of now being experts at procuring PPE.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And a lot of people got, you know, shammed, and a lot of people got disappointed. The quality wasn't what they were expecting. But it's been a real learning experience. And for me, you know, and I've shared this with my colleagues, I don't see a day anytime soon where one of my caregivers is going to be working without a mask. I think, you know, we're in a time and era, at least for the next couple years, where masks are going to be the thing.
Yeah, and I agree. And I was just reading on the way over here, Dr. Fucci. I never can get his name right. Fauci. He said that he thinks that we won't pull out of this until the end of 2021. Yeah. Which, you know, and I've heard the airlines will take, 2024 before the airlines recover. So there's going to be a long recovery once we do finally get to the other side of this. But you're right, this isn't the last one we're going to see.
No. So I'm looking at your website. And for our listeners, it's azalfa.org.
The website's under repair. We're getting a new one.
Okay, but I see that you just had a conference, and a virtual one at that.
We did.
And I would love, you know, because we live in this new world, you know, what were some of the things that you learned along the way? What were the goods? What were the positives? What were some of the negatives that you could improve? I mean, it was your first venture into doing that. I would love to hear, you know, what the postmortem was like.
You know, it was our first adventure, and we had to make the decision quick because I am a normally optimistic person. So our conference was supposed to be in April. I moved it to August, convinced that we'd be able to do it live. Mid-June, we made the decision to go virtual. So we had to find a company. You know, virtual allows so much. Instead of restricting yourself to speakers that are, or they're relatively less expensive to bring in the virtual marketplace, you can get speakers from anywhere in the world.
Isn't that great?
Because they're virtual.
Right.
And attendees from anywhere in the world because it's virtual. So to me, I don't think virtual conferences will be around forever. For right now, I think there'll be a hybrid model, especially for large national conferences because people like that in person. But our chat box was lit up. For, a group that we can't get to ask questions in person, they went nuts. So, I liked it.
Well, and you get a chance to digest it at your rate because if you can't make it, I'm assuming that you made the sessions available to them so they could watch the recordings at their pace, correct?
Yeah, and when our new website goes up, there'll be a whole video because we do a lot of videos at Arizona Alpha. We video weekly out to our members instead of sending, we do an e-news, but we're video people.
No, I like that. I mean, it gives us an opportunity to really connect with our audience when we can do video. And another plug for YouTube, right? Karen Barno,
Well,
YouTube.
yeah, why we're there.
While we're there. But, what's interesting, too, is as I look at the future, the one piece, because I've attended a couple of these, is missing is the networking. I think the sessions, the educational sessions, some of them are just amazing, and they're great. And, I think some of that may stay in the new world that we're going to come into. But, being with colleagues and, telling stories and sharing experiences, I think all of us miss that.
Yeah, and there's something to say for that. I mean, we did an evening event because we had a sponsor for it, so we had to stick to it, and we did Jeopardy. We had over 120 people.
No way.
Online watching Jeopardy. And it turned, I mean, we were laughing so hard because after a while they were screaming the answer to the people, because we had people that signed up and volunteered to be contestants, and people were screaming the answer to them. And we had more online than we would have normally at one, and they were much more involved.
How fortunate, and if there is a silver lining, that this happened in 2020 and not in 1997. Because in 1997, we could have never pulled any of the stuff that we pull off today. And, the company that we are partnered with, and we've talked about it here on the show, is called Honor, and they're out of San Francisco. Our conferences were last week, and it was 2 days. Each one was about 2.5 hours. And, one of the guys that we had attend was Dr. Joseph Coughlin, and he is the founder of the MIT Age Lab, where they do a lot of innovations, and they've created a lot of stuff that has come to market already, and incubating a lot of other stuff. And, he said that because of this pandemic, one of the things that is a bright spot, especially in healthcare, is that we have just advanced at least 5 years, if not 10 years, in terms of incorporating technology.
Yes.
Because healthcare's always been so slow to adopt.
Telehealth. Nobody ever wanted to use telehealth.
Right. Now everyone is.
Yeah.
I've had doctors on here that never used it before, and they're using it now, and they really like it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Many of them want to touch their patients, see their patients, but, to check in for a wellness visit, where you don't need to, it's nice. And when we look at our older adult population, the population I serve and your members serve, it's hard to get to the doctor's office. So now we could bring the doctor to them.
And especially if it's just meds, that they're renewing their meds, and it's not a big deal, then why have to, get into the car, drive?
And you know what it's like to get a Centurion or a 90-year-old, and it's the biggest event of their day. And they're exhausted by the time and sitting in that waiting room, they could be susceptible to some other infection.
Exactly. I think telehealth is around to stay. And I think you're right. I think people embraced more technology faster than they normally would have.
Well, we're down 3. Got a little AC/DC taking us out.
All right.
So we got one more, Karen. What are we going to talk about? Oh, there's plenty to talk about.
We could sit here all day long.
All right, we'll be right back. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I've got Karen Barno in the studio. She hasn't been here in 4 years, but we're catching up. Stick around. We got one more segment. The safety of older loved ones during this pandemic has posed the greatest challenge for many families. Hi. This is Bob Roth, managing partner of Cypress HomeCare Solutions. I know many of you are nervous to choose a communal living option for your elderly loved ones these days, but HomeCare remains the safest alternative. For over 25 years, Cypress HomeCare has served our community, and today we continue to help families by placing high-quality caregivers into their homes that follow the strictest CDC safety and testing guidelines. Cypress HomeCare is here for them, and we're here for you. Bathing, meal preparation, medication reminders, and so much more, whether it's a couple times a week or every day. So if you want to keep your loved ones safe and at home, call us today at 602-264-8009 or look us up on the web at cypresshomecare.com.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I've got Karen Barno in the studio. She is the CEO and president of the Assisted Living Federation of America, otherwise known as Arizona Alpha, and she also is a podcaster of the Possibilities Cafe, and she is a shadow healer and business builder and really helping so many women out there, and you're so inspirational in what you're doing, Karen.
Oh,
so
thank you.
I thank you for the work
I'm
that you do.
embarrassed.
No, you should not be embarrassed. And you know what? I love how real you are, because you shared with us in the first segment, and you've shared with your podcast that you've worked with speech therapists, and you've had troubles with your S's and R's, and I did it one time too. So
Oh, really? R's and S's?
Mine was the th.
Oh, wow.
I could never say that.
And now?
I can say it.
Good for you. You had better therapist.
I would have said therapist, but now I can say therapist, right? But I do have a daughter, too, that is a speech pathologist, and this is what she does for a living. And remarkable that you've overcome that, and you're a podcaster. Who knew? Who knew? I mean, tell your grade school teachers what you're doing now.
Oh, they wouldn't believe it. I mean, I graduated in the bottom 5%.
Wow.
I was considered special needs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Never would have known that. And how appropriate that you're doing this type of work.
Because everything's overcomable, and I want people to understand that don't let other people label you. Label yourself. I believed that I wasn't smart my whole life. I mean, I battled all the way through college. It was hard for me until one day I had a teacher that looked at me and said, you're a pretty smart person. I was like, what? So, don't allow your childhood labels to stick to you.
Well, your latest one on September 3rd was Others' Opinions of You. And I like the podcasts when they're like 9 or 10 minutes long. They're really easy, and I thought that was really a really inspirational podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's a result of my ADHD. If a podcast gets, as I told you, if it gets to 12 minutes, I'm looking going, how much longer? How much longer?
Well, you know what? You do a lot, and we were talking about assisted living, and really, you talk about overcoming, and we're going to overcome this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we will rebound.
We will.
Assisted living provides a need. Home care provides a need. People want to stay home as long as they can before they move into assisted living. Healthcare will always stay around. I just think healthcare is going to come out of this better. I think
so.
There's going to be a lot of positive improvements. I mean, as we said offline, assisted living has made so many new friends with industries that we never touched because it wasn't a part of us.
Right.
That now, we're all talking amongst ourselves, and how can we build better bridges so the next time this happens?
Well, and I love the fact that you're working really close with the Arizona Healthcare Association. You're working really closely with Leading Age. I mean, we're all in this together. I have a good friend of mine, Peter Ross, who was the president of our HomeCare Association of America. It's our national trade association. He's also the president of Senior Helpers. He refers to competitors as frenemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have lots of frenemies.
We're getting ready to Leading Age, ACA, ALAHA, the Homes Association, and myself are getting ready to debut a podcast.
Oh, wow.
Arizona Long-Term Care Town Hall.
I like that.
Because for years we battled each other for no reason other than I guess it was the thing to do. And just to help the public understand who we are and what we do and how can we better serve them.
And that's so important. You and I have talked about what we're trying to do in home care with the Safe Home Care Coalition is educate and enlighten people, not only people that are in the healthcare continuum, which they need a lot of educating, but also the consumers.
The consumer needs to understand who we are.
Exactly.
Who all of us are. I mean, we do it all day long, so we just assume everybody gets it. And they don't.
No, they don't. So as we wrap up our show, what questions have I not asked? What are some of the thoughts of your mind as it relates to really enabling our older adults to age better ways to age?
I think that, I've said this almost when assisted living started, that assisted living is something's going to come behind assisted living. And I kind of picture it as a cul-de-sac where all the services and needs are brought into this cul-de-sac. But the federal government's going to have to tear down the walls between nursing homes and assisted living to allow all the services to be brought into one apartment. Because the next generation coming up behind us, the Vietnam vet, right now we have the Korean War vet, but the Vietnam vet is not going to put up with moving, from place to place to place.
Right. Now, I like that vision, and I've read and heard people talk about the village concept, or, there was Dr. Bill Thomas. He talked about Minka homes and building Minka homes on, a couple acre plots, so people can share resources. Because at the end of the day, the biggest challenge we have, beside awareness, because we still want people to know that there are options like home care and assisted living, is the affordability piece. And if we can share in some of those resources, we can make it more and more affordable. At the end of the day, in home care, there are really 4 ways that you can pay for home care: private pay, long-term care insurance. You can pay through it VA benefits or Medicaid. And I would imagine the same is really
same
true
for
with assisted living.
But I can't tell you how many children are probably not telling their parents how much assisted living cost.
Right.
I mean, we had my mom in assisted living. We told her it was $2,000 a month. And she was happy with that. We told them never let her see a bill.
Yeah.
Because she'll pack up and move out.
Exactly. But you know what? You and a lot of others, or maybe more the exception, you and I run into some that look at that as their inheritance, and they don't want to spend that kind of money on their mothers and fathers.
Yeah, that's so sad.
It really is.
Yeah, I don't get that at all.
That's theirs,
Yeah.
not yours.
Yep.
I'm dealing with one right now that there's an attorney involved, and it breaks my heart.
It really does. There were 3 children in my family, and we all shared the same attitude. It's their money. And then when my mom passed, there was some money left over, and we looked at each other and said, third.
There you go.
I mean, let's not argue. Let's not fight. Let's just move on.
So we got 1 minute left. So NFL football started yesterday, and you are a big Pittsburgh Steelers. I said it right, Steelers. That's the way they say it in Pittsburgh.
It's the Steelers.
The Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers.
So tell me, what's it looking like for this year? Is Ben back?
Ben's back, but Ben's an old guy, and I don't know. We need a new quarterback. But, the Steelers are winners, and we will always be winners. So we might, dip for a year or 2, but we'll be back.
You'll be back.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he might come back as good as new. We did well last year with the duck guy, and I can't think what we called him, the duck man, whatever. So we held our own. But, if Ben comes back and can stay upright. And
then you going to be watching TB12 down in Tampa Bay?
Oh, you betcha.
TB12 and Gronk.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Tom Brady's story.
Yeah.
But, because that he still has that fire burning.
Yeah.
After he has all the money in the world.
43 years old, too.
Yeah. But who does not want, and I told my husband, as much as I love my Steelers and even the Cardinals, when Bruce Arians wins a Super Bowl, I'm going to cry.
Karen Barno, thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. We'll be back next week.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit CypressHomeCare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3